Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. My name is Ashley Abdullah, and I'm the Director of Marketing for Emerge Americas. On behalf of my entire team, we thank you for joining this afternoon's virtual panel event entitled Building Teams for the Future of Growth. The majority of our virtual panel will be focused on our presenters today, and we're going to hear from each of them. But you will have the opportunity to engage with them via our Q&A session. So we encourage you to get involved in the conversation. If anyone poses a question or a statement that particularly resonates with you, we invite you to submit your comments or questions in the chat box and Q&A portal. If you'd like to submit a particular question for one of our panelists, the best thing to do is use the @ symbol and type the panelist's name. Please note that we are recording today's session so as to stream to a larger audience, and the recording will be made available so as to watch on demand after the close of today's event. To open our event, please join me in giving a warm welcome to the COO of Emerge Americas, Diane Vidoni.
Thank you, Ashley, and welcome everyone to this afternoon's virtual panel conversation in partnership with Bank of America and Taxfyle. My name is Diane Vidoni, and I'm the COO of Emerge Americas, a platform that connects the dots between startups, investors, higher ed, corporate enterprises, and government officials with one objective: to spur investment and innovation across the Americas and to create a sustainable and thriving tech hub for the Americas in South Florida. To this end, each year we host an annual global event, the Emerge Americas Tech Conference, which convenes more than 16,000 attendees from over 40 different countries. In addition to our tentpole event, we create and curate content and resources for entrepreneurs, investors, and our entire ecosystem to help address the latest challenges and opportunities in tech and venture. And that's why today's virtual panel couldn't be more timely with such a stellar panelist lineup. Talent is a priority for companies this year, especially for startups. Hiring the right team is essential. Not only does having the right team help you move faster today, but it also sets the foundation for everyone you hire moving forward. More than your investors or even you as a founder, your early employees will have a tremendous influence on the trajectory of your company. You hire them, and oftentimes they hire everyone else. Prospective talent will want to work with your team, and the great people you hire will know other great people. So hiring the right people is a business imperative. This brings us to the million-dollar question. How can founders recruit a top-notch early team that sets up your startup for future growth? As someone with over 25 years of experience, I know firsthand that recruiting is just as much an art as it is a science. And today, we're going to talk with 3 industry leaders who will share their experiences, lessons learned, and best practices. So, without further ado, it's my honor and pleasure to introduce our panelists who are joining us this afternoon. Please join me in welcoming our first guest, Scott Dolsey, Director of Emerging Growth and Regional Investment Banking at Bank of America Securities. Scott is a director with the Bank of America Securities Investment Banking team covering the state of Florida. He works closely with Bank of America's commercial banking and private wealth divisions to identify and execute M&A capital market opportunities for clients. Scott is based out of Miami. Welcome, Scott, and thank you for joining us today. Thanks, Scott. Also joining us this afternoon is Ricky Laviña. Ricky is the CEO and co-founder of accounting tech company Taxfyle. Prior to founding Taxfyle in 2015, Ricky worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers as an auditor, where he witnessed firsthand and learned about the systemic inefficiencies of the accounting industries. Since then, Ricky and his team have transformed Taxfyle from an idea to a venture-backed company that serves tens of thousands of taxpayers each year, hundreds of CPA firms around the country, and counts international accounting corporations among its enterprise clientele. As an additional bragging right, for the second year in a row, Taxfyle landed within the top 15% of Inc. magazine's Inc. 5000 list, putting the company into an elite group that includes organizations such as Microsoft, Intuit, Zappos, and Oracle. Welcome, Ricky, and thank you for joining us today.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. And our next guest is Chris Stegner. In 2017, Chris received the Technology Entrepreneur of the Year Award by the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce. And in 2018, he co-founded and became the CEO of Very Big Things. Since its inception, VBT has experienced a meteoric rise, largely due to the legacy-worthy products they produce. The company has grown to over 70 employees and expanded globally with 3 offices. In addition to being named South Florida's most acclaimed startup by Fort Lauderdale Illustrated, VBT has taken home 59 prestigious awards, including a Webby Award and a Digiday Award. Additionally, a little birdie told us he recently treated his creative team to a VIP tour of Disney last month for inspiration. Very cool. Welcome, Chris. It's great to have you with us today. So, with a limited amount of time, let's jump right in. Scott, you've been on the road capital raising with clients for well over a decade. How crucial of a factor is having a talented management team?
Thanks, Diane. I'd say having a strong leadership team who can present well together in a cohesive way has become even more important through the pandemic. Investors are extremely busy, multitasking, especially in this virtual environment. So presenters on the management team really need to be polished and impactful to hold the investors' attention. It was different even 2-3 years ago. You could bet that investors who were meeting with you had done some initial diligence on your company and could even maybe make the jump straight into Q&A versus a more standard page flip of the presentation. But now with back-to-back schedules, deal pipelines maxed out, investors may say to themselves, let's meet the management team first, and then let's make the call on whether we really want to start diligencing this business. So I would say, yes, having a talented management team is crucial, of course, but even if your team is bulletproof from an experience standpoint, it's still critically important to do several dry runs before your pitch to make sure there's good flow, good cohesion for all members of the team, because this management team may not have a lot of practice presenting together in the same room or virtually. So that extra work can certainly help enhance valuation and lead to better pricing in the debt markets, which is a key goal for all early stage companies.
Perfect. So in that regard, Scott, what are some tips that you would give to a team that's getting ready to present to investors, knowing that perhaps the background hasn't been done yet?
Sure. So as far as format, I'd say investors appreciate when the founder and CEO kicks off, sets the tone, vision, but then quickly defers to other members of the C-suite who can speak articulately about their roles and passion for the company. So really the whole team needs an opportunity to showcase their skill sets, and those skill sets should really complement each other. I've also seen investors really respond well to anecdotes of team members working together successfully in the past. So it can show how agile the team can be and their ability to potentially pivot should a new or more profitable product or service present itself. As far as optics, it's good to have 3 or 4 folks with speaking roles, again, CEO hitting on the vision, product differentiation, and then leaving kind of the CFO, CTO, and others to speak to initiatives that drive value and growth. So you want to showcase a clear hierarchy with the CEO as the quarterback. And then lastly, hopefully what's instilled in the investor's mind as a key takeaway is a strong culture, positive, hardworking culture where all members of the team really have an authentic passion for what they do and the mission they're on.
Wonderful, great advice, Scott. So I think I'm going to flip the coin and say, what are examples of some red flags for investors when evaluating the team of a particular company?
Sure. Well, number one, and I've seen this more than a few times, is that the CEO or founder is so dominant that they answer every question, and the rest of the C-suite is too scared to speak. So in the credit world, we call this a key woman or a key man risk. So the question is what happens if this person decides to leave? How deep is their bench, and can this leader properly allocate responsibilities? So investors understand that great ideas without the full management team's engagement are very tough to realize. So another red flag could be that management team owns very little or no equity in the business. So you want to make sure incentives and comp are aligned. And some teams are unable to answer some basic questions on competitive landscape, product differentiation. How are they going to use the capital that they raise? Or be able to back into how large is their total addressable market. And I know it seems impossible, but even at the highest level, investors sometimes walk away from a presentation asking themselves, what does this company do? What do they really do? So simplifying a presentation is not necessarily a bad thing. So, again, the key point is, unpolished presentation can cost you, either from a valuation standpoint or from a rate perspective if you're raising debt or structured capital.
Wow, that is great advice, Scott. Thank you so much. And now I'm going to look at the other side and go to Ricky, seeing as someone who was looking for capital at one point in time. So Ricky, tell us how you met and selected your original core team when you founded Taxfyle 6 years ago.
Yeah, so I have two other co-founders, Mike and Will, and I've known Mike since I was in 7th grade. When you choose your co-founders, it's very much like a marriage, right? So it comes down to trust and essentially value, right? So what does each one of them bring to the table? One's a CTO, one's RCO, and also are these the people that that you have enough trust with, that are going to go through the bumps, the ups and downs, especially in the first few years of gaining traction and getting a product to market, right? So that's the most important decision you'll make. It's one that's going to stick with the company for forever. Management teams come and go, directors, even geography, you can move a company, right? But in terms of setting that tone, in terms of what the company's identity is, and how that manifests through the founders, that's extremely important, right? So you need to make sure you have someone that you trust, because it could go terribly sideways. I've known plenty of my friend CEOs that have had horror stories on the West Coast and New York and down here. So yeah, because if you're doing it right and you have an exponential company, you should experience stress points. It wasn't always roses for the Ubers and Lyfts and all these great companies of the world, right? There's a story or two in there, where they're up against it, and that's where the trust factor comes in, because if they stick it out and there is a vision behind it, then that's how you see the other side.
No, wow, I can definitely relate to that for sure. So with all that we've seen, especially in the last year, how has diversity been an influencing factor for sourcing talent for a Taxfyle?
Yeah, I think that, when we take a look at the positions that we want to hire for, okay, whether it's in engineering or in customer success or whatever, we're always taking an approach, regardless of wherever this person may sit, right? Virtual, remote, or in person here in Miami. Are they the best person for the job? Are they the most talented? How are they going to execute against the roadmap? Is it someone that could depend upon? Is it someone that their surrounding team can depend upon? A good example here would be early on, one of our lead engineers, we found him on Twitter. He was 20, no formal education, but he was a great coder, and he's getting retweeted by people that some of the most famous coders in the world, that their stack has now been bought up by Microsoft, right? These, obviously you hold these guys in high regards, and they hold, this guy in regards. There's something to it. So He was based out of Denmark, and he did what we needed a coder to do with JavaScript, exactly against the roadmap. And 5 years later, he's still with us now. He actually moved down to Miami, got him on a visa. Our head of design is based out of South Africa, has won multiple Adobe awards. We take design very seriously, unlike a lot of other accounting startups, or not startups, but accounting companies, CPA firms. It's kind of, you think accounting boring, right? We take pride in our design, right? So for that position, we wanted someone that has a firm grasp of UX, UI, lead a team, and could also market the product really well within the spirit of the company. So I think over the years we've shown that it doesn't really matter who you are. It's are you answering the call for the position?
Perfect. Well, that leads me a little into the next question. So we all know within the last 20 months, Taxfyle has experienced hyper growth. How have you evaluated talent and potential hires as the company continues to scale?
It's tough. We always say they're problems to have, but they're great problems to have. If you're growing, on the revenue side of things, you have to obviously support it, right? In our business, we have what I think is either the largest or the second largest behind Intuit's gig economy of CPAs and IRS enrolled agents, and we service 11 countries. So as your demand goes up, you kind of have to have your strategic hat on and figure out how's that going to affect different departments, right? From accounting to CS, also capital raise, right? Because you're growing a lot, and to the first segment point, you gotta raise some funds sometimes. You're not necessarily, if you're a high growth startup in technology, super profitable, right? You're probably burning through a lot because you're experiencing 300% growth or whatever it may be. So the timing, getting that all synced up is an art form. But you don't want to shortcut any steps. You don't want to just say, okay, I just need bodies, and therefore I'm going to hire a recruiter, and they're just going to throw resumes my way with a bunch of good logos. This person from Twitter and Square. That means nothing to the greater mission. You always have to stick to your core beliefs and to that kind of culture or whatever that may be within your company, and ask yourself for every single position, whether it's intern to director or VP, is this person in line with what we're trying to do here, culturally, and are they going to get the job done from a meritocracy perspective? And I still tend to review almost all the resumes, and we just hired an in-house recruiter here that does a full-time HR, and that's extremely important, because you will see that when you do shortcut it, you're probably going to miss on hit on these hires.
No, it makes perfect sense, Ricky, and we're definitely wishing you good luck as you continue that hiring. So Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you now for a few minutes. I'd love to learn more about how you met and selected your executive team when you launched Very Big Things.
Yeah, so I mean, our team, well, I guess I'll take a step back and I'll say, one of the pieces of advice that I give to every entrepreneur is very much in line with something Ricky just mentioned, which is, except I'll even take it a step further and say, I've come up with a rule of only partnering with people I've actually worked with before. And sometimes I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of founders can think, well, I've known this person for a long time, like we're buddies, we get drinks all the time, etc. But I don't feel like you really know how somebody's going to work until you've actually worked with them. And but what I completely agree with Ricky on is you can't be too picky about the people you partner with, because that's your infrastructure for the future of the company. And so on my side, I'd worked at a small consulting company that helped a lot of high-end companies like Apple, Walmart, T-Mobile, et cetera, build out some of their tech projects. And I was the 13th person hired there. I thought I was one of the best developers in the world. And I very quickly learned that I was very far from it. The first 3 people hired there were like leaps and bounds better than me. And once again, like their work ethic was like perfect. And they said, hey, if you ever go to start a company, let us know, and we'd love to come with you. And that didn't happen right then. I ended up going and joining a VC fund in the meantime. And when I was at the VC fund, it was basically my and our team's job that once we invested $3 or $5 million into a startup, that we'd make sure that they'd actually be successful, that they'd build the right product, that they'd monetize it correctly, that they'd have the right strategy, that they'd grow the team, etc. And eventually, through that process, we said, okay, well, the problem we keep hitting is we give them $5 million, we say, go build a team and start building something. And they're going through the same problems we're talking about, trying to hire good teams and trying to figure out how to build those teams. And it's a problem that all of a sudden, 6 months later, we'd say, okay, is it done? And we'd say, well, we're almost got the right hires, we feel. Like some people are doing really good, we had to let some people go, but we're feeling really good about the team right now. We're like, okay, well, what did it build? And so then we turned to agencies to help solve that problem. And the problem is that most agencies we found, they're solving the same problems that they've always done, which is like, they give us a scope of work, then we'll return you a product and good luck with it, which worked well to get a product, but bad to get the product that they actually needed. And so when that happened, we started very big things. And to answer your question, I ended up going back to the partners from the previous consulting company and said, hey guys, I'm doing that thing. Do you want to join? And they said, yeah, definitely, let's do it. And then I went to my partners at the VC fund, to our chief creative officer there and our VP of investment. And I said, guys, we need to build this. And they said, we're game. And but it's all people that I'd spent a lot of time working hand in hand with in these situations. And it's proven to be the best thing in the entire world, because as we've grown, being able to depend on them has been life-changing.
Wow, yeah, I mean, clearly those relationships are what helped you scale the business so much. So talk to us a little bit, tell us what Very Big Things specializes in.
Yeah, so we basically solving that problem I was just talking about, which is, hey, we've raised 5 million in funding, or 20 million, or 80 million, or inside of our enterprise company, we've got a champion that wants to do something innovative and cool. We don't want to be that old relic of a company anymore. We want to do something that's really awesome. Those people will come to us, and basically we help them ideate, strategize, design, and develop whatever that solution is. That's kind of the boring version of it. The less boring version is that we really work hand in hand to guarantee their success. And it's getting in the trenches, making their worries our worries, and doing everything possible to help them grow. And it's been working very well. So
great. Well, congrats on that. Great to hear about what you're doing over there. So tell me a little bit more. BBT is a remote company and really geographically agnostic. How do you evaluate talent as your company continues to scale globally?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm going to lean on something that actually Ricky mentioned once again, which is the best talent. Well, there's kind of two truths that I think. There's the fact that not only the best talent in the world will ever be in one zip code, and there's the fact that people are really innovative when they're together. And so we've really been pushing on both of those departments, which is we have people remote all over the world, to your point. We got people from Seattle to Boston to Orlando to here to Croatia and even the Ukraine, where we're finding just some of the greatest talent. However, then we've also built these 3 offices that we really consider to be like privately owned co-working spaces that anybody from anywhere around the world can come together and collaborate on these different projects. And it's been working really well so far. This kind of a mixed match approach of getting the best people in the world, but then also allowing them to be as innovative as possible.
Wow, that is a great strategy. I love hearing about that. So now that we've learned about each of you, I'm going to throw out a question for the whole group. With job openings at a record high, how can startup founders refine their methods for attracting talent in a competitive environment? How can new businesses stand out in such a competitive talent pool?
I mean, I can take a swing at this one for you. So it is something that we've been plaguing ourselves with, because If we could hire 50 more people tomorrow, we would, but it's always finding those great people. And I think there's one thing of hiring people, and there's another thing of hiring the people you're really looking for. And for us, like our company's all around the idea of like innovation and excellence. And when we're sitting there, we started to look introspectively at ourselves and saying, okay, cool, we're doing a great job being innovative for our clients, we're being innovative for our own team internally, et cetera. However, when we're reaching out to hire people, we're using the same boring tactics that every other company known to man has always used, the normal channels you always hear about. And we're sitting there saying, if we want to attract the most innovative people in the world, they're not going to be attractive to people doing the same old boring stuff. Like, we need to literally look at the ways in which we go to reach out to them and say, how can we innovate that process to something that we've never seen before? You know, so it's one of those challenges to say, how do we evolve when you're competing against 5,000 companies for the same 10 amazing people? How do you stick out in the crowd? And I think we've always seen employees do this. Like, people are looking for jobs, they'll think of an innovative way to send a resume, and it catches wildfire on social media, and they get the job plus 30 other job offers. It's pretty rare that you actually see the companies ever taking the effort to say, how do we stick out? How do we do something innovative to actually get the people? And that's something we're working on really hard right now, is like, how do we let our true colors of innovation shine through in the ways we actually go about reaching out to people, and hopefully they recognize and say, that's where I want to go. I want to be with those guys.
No, great advice, Chris. Ricky, Scott, anything to add on this one?
Well, that's the whole thesis of our company, right? It's because right now in the accounting industry, there's the cost of labor has gone up like 24% in the past 12 months. Before, where CPA firms could hire, top talent, 3.7, 4.0ers from Duke, University of Miami, University of Florida. Those people are now choosing other jobs and just becoming a CPA. Working 3,000 hours. Probably investment banking, technology are slightly more attractive to these talented individuals out of college, right? So we came to market with a product that essentially democratizes the work and presents it piecemeal to our economy, to our gig economy. So I will say that uncommon problems it might take uncommon solutions, and we're hopefully presenting an uncommon solution here to the accounting industry in terms of sourcing that work, because in terms of what we provide, which is doing tax returns for these firms or for these companies that have accounting departments, or for channel partners that want to add on tax services to their SaaS products, because they may be a fintech that's online. They're blocked out, right? So it's no longer W-2, hire for the year to do 6 months worth of work, right? Because the job is getting cheaper and the labor is getting more expensive. So kind of take a nuanced approach to it. That's how we are addressing it. That's our thesis for the accounting industry now. How we solve it, obviously, on our end as a software company, we're close to 100 employees right now. It's imperfect. You have people always competing for your talent. You try to compete for other people's talent. You go out to market every day with a hiring plan and trying to fill positions, and then obviously life circumstances, when you start getting to scale, people leave and things happen, right? So it's fluid, but I would say that, and I think I answered this on the Q&A, we're getting better at this, and it's something that kind of resonates, is people need meaning in their life. And it goes beyond just dollars, and 5-minute pitches, right? So we like to come with a career path for them and say, yep, we're exponentially growing. Sure, our stock here will appreciate much higher than it would at Intuit or whatever. And the pay has to be reasonable enough to what they'll get on market, right? But beyond that, this is how we think you could grow here at Taxfyle from day one to hopefully 5-10 years down the line.
Great, Ricky. And I think that really leads me into the next question. And because we've talked about hiring and how we help them hire, but with the unprecedented events of the last 18 months and the lingering effects that the pandemic has had on businesses and the pivots that tech companies have had to enact and have left significant impacts not only on business owners, but also on the employees. How can businesses, particularly within the tech environment, prevent that burnout and maintain that talent retention?
Yeah, it's tough, and it's going to happen. And it happened last year, right? And we saw it, right? That's a multi-variable problem, because you have to say, well, how is the company overall affected by the pandemic, right? Are we in a business that is hurting from it, or are we in one that rides tailwinds from it, right? Like I said, because we have this kind of workforce solution to the problem, that you asked before, we're running some tailwinds, right? So we're in a good position where we're benefiting from it, and we have more options, right? But I would think that what can't get overlooked as a founder is that you have to take an honest approach to your business. You have to look in the mirror, and you have to honestly assess your business, not how an investor looks at it, or your clients, right? They don't have all the information like you do, right? And that that process, going through it critically and honestly, would help you come up with a more accurate potential solution. So it's if you're doing things right, you're going to demand a lot from your people, because they're going to be out there innovating and doing exciting things, right? It helps if you could align career paths, and set proper expectations up front with them, so they understand that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and they are on firm ground and decide to get from point 1 to 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? But again, that has to be kind of an accurate representation of where the business is going, right? You can't just offer that if you might be out of business in 8 months or something.
No, that's great advice. And I think just to wrap up to the group, I think, from an audience perspective, they'd love to hear, what channels do you recommend taking advantage of to source talent in and around the local South Florida community?
You want me to take this, Chris? You want that?
Scott? I mean, Scott, if you want to jump in, feel free. I'll give you a tiny break, Ricky, and hand it back. But through all the channels, I think for us, at the end of the day, it comes back to existing relationships have always proven to be the best. So there are a lot of things that we're putting out there, and as you continue to scale your company, you'll start having to say, well, we can't always have everybody be a friend of somebody. We can't have somebody always have worked with somebody, even though that technically the larger your group is, the more people they should know. But you had a point of, we need to scale faster than that'll work. However, I would say definitely whenever possible, with a huge weight towards that, lean into people that you and the rest of your team have had that personal work experience with in the past, that somebody can say, oh yeah, I've worked with this person, they're amazing. Because also it'll help that person when they're coming in to say, somebody's vouched for you as a company as well. So it might allow you to be attractive to somebody that wouldn't otherwise, when you're competing against your Googles and your Facebooks and so forth. They can say, this place is amazing, I'm really loving it. But on the flip side, the work that we've seen in the cultural fit, et cetera, just seems to be amazing from using that avenue. So from there, I'll hand it off to Scott or Ricky.
Sure. I mean, I'll just add generally on that networking topic is just spot on, right? For the folks out there, looking for work in whether it's your area in tech or in finance as a whole, and having those 10 or 20 companies that you'd look for, and then backing in to who that knows folks that work there, and just slowly chipping away conversation after conversation to learn more about that company, more about that industry, and keep it targeted. So when you reach, Ricky's desk, or you reach Chris's desk, several conversations along the way, you come across as extremely focused and knowledgeable about the sector and area. And you've really had to test yourself on the meaning and purpose, like Ricky was talking about, on why you're sitting there in front of them today and why that makes sense for you. So hopefully there's a good fit going forward. That seems to be a proven path time and time again. It's, I think, worked for all of us.
Wonderful. Thank you all for those insights. I just have to say, this has been truly a rich and impactful conversation with a lot of actionable takeaways. I can't thank you all enough for sharing your insights with us. I do want to make sure that we have a chance for the audience to contribute as well. So I'm going to open it up for questions that were submitted by the audience. Ashley, do you have any audience questions for the panel?
Yes, we do. And first and foremost, thank you, Diane. Thank you to all the panelists. Such amazing takeaways. I just want to reiterate what Diane said. We got a couple of questions that came in through the community chat, and also 2 that were submitted via email and 1 via social media. So I'm going to go ahead and just dive right in. This is open to the group. The first question, and this is for anyone who would like to take this. We've talked a lot about how you evaluate talent to onboard, but how do you evaluate if a particular hire isn't the right fit? Anyone want to take that?
Go ahead, Chris. You go.
I'll tell you what, you take the next one, Scott, you got the next one, we'll call it a good. This is we set up the company from the very beginning with 3 principles, and that's a happy team, and it's exceptional products, and it's happy clients. But underneath of each one of those principles, we put a lot of effort to change them from just being like something that sounds great into real values, like a guide for anybody in the company, that if you don't know what to do in a situation, you should be able to just kind of look at our principles and know how to make the decision without consulting anybody else, and be empowered by that. So we tend to go back to those principles when seeing if people are being a good fit or not, and say that, hey, we have these values and we see you're not upholding this one, and this one, but then I think super important as well is identifying that somebody might not be a good fit is one piece. And I think having those principles and values is an important piece to make it not something that's ever political, but it's really kind of based on your beliefs as a company. But now what do you do with that person when you realize they're not a fit? And I think one of the best things that we started doing is taking a page from so many books, is we'll just have a very blunt conversation with the person. And we'll just say, just so you know, here's these, things that it seems like you're not fitting right this second. We don't want to sugarcoat that, but if we can solve these by this timeline, we think you'd be an awesome person on the team. But if you can't, then we need to go our own ways. And I don't think we've ever had somebody just say, let's go our own ways. And it's been amazing. So many people we will see, I'd say 90% of the time, completely flip, and it's just nobody been blunt and said, this is what we need from you. And once they have that plan, they're like, okay, awesome, let me do it. And it's turned out to be amazing. On top of that, I feel like we've done it as a solid rule. Like, unless somebody breaks some rule that like everybody in the world should know not to break, then as always happens, and that's good for the rest of our team, because they know they never need to worry about their job unless they had this discussion with us. So it's like a little, okay, cool, I'm good. They approve of me, and that's, I think, important when you start growing. Especially past like 100 employees, I imagine. So that's it.
Thank you, Chris. Wow. Anyone else? Well,
Yeah, I would just say setting expectations, right? So you can't fault someone if they're set up for failure, right? So the onus is on you for establishing as detailed and as exact as you can what you need out of that person for that position. Okay, then we start off the relationship, because it is a relationship, on the same page. Now, when it comes to assessing it, it makes it a lot easier, right? You could assess, did we achieve our goals, right, that we set out and laid out and we expected, right? Or were we poor in sending those expectations, and do we need to kind of readjust, right? And I think going through that process, it's if you could do that early and be thoughtful about it, it makes the decision making that much easier.
I like how you responded, because that really dials down to really just setting the expectations based and rooted in the corporate culture, right? The next question that we have is actually very poignant. In a remote working environment, how do you evaluate a potential hire's soft skills?
Soft skills of their engineer, you could do coding tests, you could take a look at how active they are in GitHub. Is this just a job for them? Are they passionate about their stack? Are they creative, right? There should be ancillary kind of evidence, right, to assess. Obviously, if you're a designer or a front-end engineer, it's different than if you're back-end, but there's a narrative there. There's a story that each individual brings to the interview, and it doesn't. I think for a position engineer, you could sort that out pretty easily remotely. And for other departments, let's say sales or operations, there's a story there too. Obviously in sales, it's binary, and people tend to fall back on, oh, did this person hit quotas or not? But that's not a direct representation, or I don't think it's not the best bit of information that you could extract from that potential candidate to see whether they're going to carry forward that success to you and to your company. So I like to drive at those points by having conversations with them, and then going back, there's a theme here, culture. There's a theme here, right? Setting expectations, diving into how things are different here than where they're coming from, being open and honest in terms of around your settings. It doesn't matter if you have a small team and they're coming from a bigger company. You're talking to them, they're intrigued, they want to hear the story, they want to see where this is going to go. People want excitement, people want to be part of exciting projects, right? Yeah, sure, there's some people that like to collect paychecks and stay in bureaucracy, but we're talking about startups here, right? This is Emerge. You're probably part of an exciting company. Yeah, you're doing great things. So talk to them about that story, and be honest about it in terms of, yeah, we're small, this department's small, but this is the way that we hire. Your responsibility is going to be X, Y, and Z, and is this, and then role play it. How would you go about solving these problems?
Love it.
Also, Ashley, I agree with everything Ricky said, but how I really judge soft skills these days is just looking at people's virtual backgrounds.
I love it.
I take a good look, and then if I want them to succeed, I talk to them about how potentially to dress it up for their next conversation. Then they're on their way.
I love it, with the guy with the plain background. Very true. You learn a lot about people in the pandemic, seeing their background.
Sure. I am currently employed. It'd probably be different if I was shooting for another role.
Oh, too funny, too funny. Well, those were the questions that we had submitted virtually before, but we have a couple that were in the chat. Ricky, I see that you went ahead, the overachiever. Thank you for answering them in the chat. But because we're recording this and this will be watched on demand, I kind of want to dial into each one because we have a few minutes left before the event ends, if you don't mind. So the first question, and you can expound on what you already kind of put in there for the broader group. The first question that we have is from Jess Holland. Thank you so much for submitting your question. And it reads, in your opinion, what's the number one thing you do to focus on retaining good talent? We talked about this, but if you can kind of expound on what you put in your response here, that would be really great for everyone who's tuning in on demand.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we like to set a career path, right? So meaning is very important, and it goes beyond just the salary and the title. I mean, that's great, but they're more dopamine hits than anything else. They wear off, right? And if you're running a serious company with serious individuals, you want to be around for years to come, if not decades, right? So if you want to retain someone, get them bought into the narrative, get them bought into the thesis of the company, and the way that you do that is to set a career path, right? Whether it's an intern or a director that may have 12 years experience, right? We all need meaning, and meaning goes beyond just the present day, right? Meaning is not just, oh, we're going to pay you X amount of dollars. How many people out there making a ton of money that are miserable, right? So it goes beyond that. What am I doing today? If I hit my goals, what do you think I could be doing? Is there horizontal growth here? Because that's one of the things that us as startup founders have as an advantage, because we're scaling, right? We're growing, scaling multiple departments. If someone's not a good fit here, but they fit culturally great and they're an awesome worker, and they could be happier in another department, and then why not provide that to them? And that should be all kind of laid out as best as you can up front.
I love that. I love that. And I think one of the biggest proof points about your company is you said a lot of the original employees that you first hired when you first launched are still with you to this day. So I think you are a living testament to that. Scott and Chris, I would love to kind of hear your thoughts about, what have you seen be really effective about retaining good talent, both in your careers personally and what you have done as leaders in your industry?
Yeah, I really think that comment on having a vision and having that goal and helping that employee realize that vision or goal, whether that employee knew it first or whether the employer is helping them realize what that goal or vision could be and the steps they need to take to achieve that is very powerful. And it creates a lot of loyalty, and it creates a very authentic bond between manager and employee, where you're really running hard at the same goal, and that gets you up earlier each day, and it makes you work harder. It gives you you're more proactive, you're paying more attention to detail, and you have a lot more pride in your work. So finding that nice match is it's not easy to do, but once you're able to establish it, it's incredibly powerful.
Wow, so true. Chris, any thoughts on that?
I think everybody hit most of the really big things. The last thing I'd say is, as your team, especially as everybody mentioned, if you're joining with a startup, any company with less than 10,000 people, the team is looking for something a little extra, and they're looking for you to go and create amazing things and do very impressive stuff. And through that process, you're going to be inspiring them a lot. And one of the most important things, I think, is making sure that you end up walking the walk. It can't just be you're telling the team something that sounds optimistic and amazing. You need to make sure that you're fulfilling that every single step of the way. Otherwise, they'll stop believing that you're going to. And the goals have to continue to get more and more ambitious. So having that track record of delivering on what you said you would, I think is massively important to keep people excited about that next decade of what you're going to be doing together.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. The next question is from Alexander. Thank you so much for submitting your question. It reads, with such a diverse workforce, how much emphasis do you put on formal education from those who want to join your company?
I answered that one with very little to none. It's a crutch. It's a crutch. I mean, like I said, just because someone has a great history doesn't necessarily mean that's going to translate to the current position. It might, it's a good data point, but that's all it is, a data point, right? So some of our best workers have no college experience, like that remote one I mentioned. My CTO didn't go to college. I think they're pretty good at what to do. If multiple Fortune 500 companies are coming to us for problem solving, and these are the people at the tip of the spear, then they're driving home some product market value that people find useful. So that's how you determine it. Will these employees provide value and hit the KPIs that you need them to hit? And we take a slightly more aggressive approach than most, I would think. It's nice, when you have the nice resume with all the logos. It's also whoever brought that person in, they could say, oh, well, they had all, that's great. But we're more concerned with, kind of getting it done and at the fault of taking longer to hire for positions, I would say.
Love that. I think that's very interesting and very poignant for a lot of the people in the audience as well. Just not looking at hiring and recruitment for your startup, within a vacuum. So I think that's a very, very important point. Our last and final question that we have, actually we do have one more, so two more. The second to the last one is, what's the best way you found to cultivate company culture remote? Are there any specific things you guys do to make it feel like coming into the office? Thank you, Jessica, for submitting your question. Anybody else?
Yeah, we have, let me start by saying that some of our best remote workers are remote, right? So that's okay. But sometimes, problem solving is better in person when you got to whiteboard something. It also provides a human element to your day to day. We are humans. We interacting, physically is very important. There's a ton of, messaging that you could get from just sitting across the table from someone and reading their body language and tone and things like that. As before and after the call, right? Because we're on Zoom for the call, and and there's not really like a day context wrapping it around, right? You can't get really a feel for if that person's having a good day, a stressful day, a great day, whatever it may be, for the general mood. So there's definitely a benefit for coming, in person, whether it's every day or at a cadence. What we try to do is, just create a nice positive environment here. We have a ping pong table. We come up with croquetas, snacks, coffee, Cuban coffee we make. We have the coffee bell that goes off like 4 times a day whenever someone steps up to the plate to make that. We go out to lunch together. We try to do happy hours. We incentivize people with Red Bulls. We stock up the refrigerator with Red Bulls, and they're free every day. And we're expanding upon all these things, so it's not just, hey, come in here and get free stuff, but it's part of a broader type of theme, which is like, we want you to sit down, at your desk, where you have 2 great screens and get a feel for the mission. And sometimes coming out of like a, let's say sterile environment like your home, where it's just you and your mind and your laptop, it could be a shot in the arm, to come to the office every now and then.
Oh, I love the way you said that. Chris, I would like to hear a little bit more about how you do that at VBT, because half of your team is actually in Europe. So how have you did that over the years?
So great question. One thing I was thinking about, I was having a tough time kind of answering part of it, especially during kind of like pandemic, where things were really spread apart and you weren't having people come into the office. And as I thought about it, I kind of realized that, as people always say, culture is always so much more. Culture is like in the fabric of who you are and what it is you're doing. And when I think to the time of like the pandemic, I think a big part of the culture there at that time was, hey, we have you guys, you're safe. Like, we put away a nest egg. You don't have anything to worry about. Your kids are going to be all right. You don't have to worry about 2 months from now, etc. You're good. And then on the flip side, our team coming and saying, hey, thank you. Let's, they had already been killing themselves because we're growing so fast. But they found a whole nother notch that I didn't think was possible. And they brought that to the table. And it's, to me, that's so much part of a culture. And then the problems we were working on at the time were, we were working on a lot of projects for huge companies to make sure that people were getting help during the pandemic. This is a lot of the things we were doing, is helping the health systems and helping accurate information get around. So during that time, it was so much of our culture, I think, was coming together and saying, how can we work together to solve these problems for each other and for other people? And it's was such an amazing driving factor. Post pandemic, we have our team, going between offices. So we've always tried to move people around, allow them to hang out with each other. The way we think of it is, like I said, once again, we're a fully remote company that has 3 privately owned co-working spaces. So the idea is people should be able to mix and go wherever they feel like. And it's amazing. Once people started getting back in the office, though, they mentioned how much that they've been missing that. And then especially once you started having people from this office, go to like Croatia and, having the teams there get together, like, this has been desperately missed. So on that front, I mean, we're trying to do more of that. We're even installing these virtual TVs in kind of like common spaces or virtual windows. So to create that same environment of like, it's not even watching anybody's screen, it's like in the kitchen, but you can go in the kitchen, there's a window to the other team's kitchen, and you can just hang out while grabbing a coffee, you know, and stuff like that's pretty cool. So like you mentioned, you know, we just took the team to Disney World, and we flew in a lot of people for that to say, hey, let's go to Disney World and just be inspired. And right now there's a restaurant called 11 Madison Park in New York City is like the top restaurant in the world. And they've got the best customer experience that I've ever seen in my entire life. And so we're taking our account management lead and our project management lead and our head of operations, we're taking them to dinner so they can just experience what the best customer experience, customer service experience in the world looks like, so we know how are we going to incorporate that, you know. So it's just any excuses we have to bring everybody together. People are really hungry for it, especially I think post-pandemic.
That is so beautiful. And before I start crying, Scott, I would love to kind of hear from an investor perspective how culture kind of plays into when you're looking at a company and looking underneath the hood, especially when you hear about like how Ricky and Chris have really built out their teams and scaled their companies. What does that look like from an investor perspective, and how does that impact, a financing decision?
Right. Well, a lot of deals are still getting done, all virtually, right? And folks not even meeting each other in person anymore. So, before when we'd be selling a company or we'd be on the road for an IPO, a lot of in-person conversations, sometimes 5 or 6 meetings a day, getting to know folks. So companies, especially if they're looking to sell themselves and they have different locations, whether it be warehouses, their headquarters, or certain parts of their business, they need to be able to start marketing their company virtually. So sometimes videos are put together more so than they would be in the past about the business, to get a feel for the culture, to get a feel for the locations and manufacturing and logistics. And I'd say, that's probably the biggest change, is learning how to market your company as a whole through the screen, almost like a commercial, almost like a TV show or a movie, with the CEO being the narrator along the way. And those companies that have been able to do that successfully have received, fair and even above fair valuations for their business throughout this pandemic.
That's such an excellent point. And I have to say, from the eMerge perspective, that's one of the things that our 3 members of the executive team, Diane, who's moderating the conversation, Felice Gordo, who's our CEO, Melissa Medina, the president and co-founder of the company, since the pandemic have really been just leaning into that, and, just being innovative of how we can think outside the box, create new content to foster that digital intimacy with our brand, right? So everything you're saying is just, it's wow, just incredible insights. For the sake of time, I'm going to turn it back over to Diane. That's all the time we have for questions today. But if anyone else continues to have additional questions, please drop them in the chat, and we're going to drop our resources so that way we continue the conversation on and offline. Diane?
I just want to say thank you so much, everyone. This has been such an enlightening hour across the board. I also would say, please join me in sharing our great appreciation with Scott, Ricky, and Chris. We greatly appreciate you taking the time to join us and sharing your invaluable insights. We've definitely unpacked a lot within the last hour, but this is truly just the tip of the iceberg, and we encourage everyone to keep the conversation going. In closing, we want to reiterate some of the key takeaways that our panelists shared with us. First and foremost, use your network and take your time when finding a co-founder. It takes time to get to know that other person and to judge if they would be a good business partner. Second, your core team is a significant factor in what investors will take into consideration when evaluating your company. Then, when evaluating talent, you must take into account both your soft skills in addition to the hard skills. And finally, define your company's culture first and build your recruitment practices around that. If you'd like to learn more about what our panelists and their work, in the Zoom chat, you'll find the direct links to their websites. And if you've enjoyed today's masterclass, I encourage you to join us at Emerge Americas for upcoming masterclasses and virtual events just like this one that we organize year-round as we lead up to our annual conference, which will be taking place April 18th and 19th, 2022 at the Miami Beach Convention Center. To find out more about our programming, our dynamic content and lineup, and the latest news and trends in tech and venture, I also encourage you to subscribe to our weekly newsletter, The Brief, at emergeamericas.com. Thank you again for joining us this afternoon, and I look forward to reconnecting soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.